Everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to walk through my first quarter financial review for 2025 using my favorite budgeting tool, which you've seen in previous videos, which is YNAB. It stands for YNAB is short for You Need a Budget, for anyone who's new here and this is the first video you're finding about this. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of share my income and expenses from January through March, and kind of explain how I've been able to stay on top of things because of YNAB. So the first kind of section here is just the income breakdown. So it's great to be able to see, where my money came from this quarter, and then this is just the regular income versus expense report that you can find in the Reflect tab on the left-hand side of your screen in YNAB. I need to also play around with the browser extension YNAB Toolkit reports, because I think there's a little bit more detail slash interesting views there. So I will probably put some of those in later in this video as well. So let's dive in. Obviously my biggest source of income here was from work. That's my full-time job, so I would expect this to be my biggest source of income. And I think January started out a little bit higher because I had not yet set up my monthly HSA withdrawals at the level that I wanted them, and I needed to kind of just figure out what that would look like. So I adjusted that, and then that's why in February and March you can see that the numbers are slightly lower than what it was in January. But this number here is a good for me to know, kind of just as an average, what my monthly take home is, and that will kind of help me just think about things, in terms of like my needs, my wants, and my kind of savings and investment goals overall throughout the year, if nothing were to change, right, in terms of the level of my income. The next kind of heavy hitters in this income category were my state tax return and my federal tax return. I know that most folks will suggest that I try to get these numbers closer to zero. I am still trying to figure out how best to do that. So I need to use, the IRS calculator and kind of figure out how to adjust my W-4 so that I can claim the right deductions ahead of time, so that I pocket more of my own money and I don't, get this huge refund in the next year. I haven't done that yet, and I haven't for the past few years either, mainly because I don't consider this to be part of money I should be allocating out, but I guess that's the point of trying to get as close to zero as possible on my tax return. So something to think about this year. So I need to look into that. Obviously I can't change anything for the past 3 months of what my withholdings have been at work. But I can probably figure out, how to, at least for the next few months of the year, right, get this closer to where I'm not receiving such a huge refund in 2026. I have made about $270 so far this year in interest earned. This is just money that sits in my high yield savings accounts and grows, so that's great. I don't do anything for that. I made some money from some online work, so I got paid through PayPal. And then Venmo and Zelle are just basically reimbursements that come in from folks, either because I cover something, when I go out with friends or with family. And I think this one in March was a birthday gift, so things like that just get counted as income for the purposes of YNAB, because that's money that I can then allocate to certain line items. All right, so now for the more interesting part, which is where did all that money go? So I think the total income was $34,375 over the last 3 months of the year. So some heavy hitting categories are my student loans. I've paid almost $4,000, which is a large chunk of change. The queendom, which is basically like the things that, you know, keep the roof over my head, etc., is definitely a huge expense, right? That's like $16,000, which is crazy, but that is the reality of it. Yeah, so my mortgage, property tax, this, you know, is not every 3 months, thankfully. It's just twice a year, but I budget for it monthly just so that I have the money. I'm sure when I do this recap over Q2, which is, you know, April, May, and June, obviously this is going to be much less because I would have not spent any money on this line item because I just saved the money. So yeah, it makes sense that this kind of happened. So this number is actually, you know, closer to 11,000 if you really think about like true monthly expenses, for the quarter, because this just happened to be paid in this quarter. Other things, HOA is a large one, you know, $2,000 is basically almost one mortgage payment. So it's quite a lot of money, but that's, again, the reality of living in a super high cost of living area. Yeah, and then internet, electricity, these are, you know, pretty normal numbers. And I think the home insurance, again, gets paid once a year, but I save for it every month. So that's why it's just looking like a crazy amount. Okay, so Treasury of Enchantments, this is all my subscriptions, whether they be annual, monthly, every 6 months, doesn't really matter. I have various categories, so like Alchemist elixirs are my vitamins, you know, enchanted viewing portals, things like TV, Apple TV, Guardian Sentries are things like alarm systems, and there's something else in there that I'm forgetting, but that's okay. Ethereal Vaults are like my online storage, cloud storage kind of things. Scrolls and Tomes, I think, is like a digital kind of creation subscriptions, so like Adobe. I have a subscription for like a shower filter and my water filter for my fridge, so that's Elemental Purification. And then Adventures Guild Pass is just games and like NVIDIA Game Pass, things like that. Royal Treasury Tribute is a honker once a year. It's about $550 because it's a credit card annual fee. So that's where all of this money went. Obviously, some of these numbers are larger because they happen to pull out like the full, you know, yearly. For example, this one pulled out some yearly fee. Same here for the credit card, you know, annual fee. Okie dokie. And then this category is actually one that I was really interested in thinking about, which is, you know, groceries and things like that. Beyond like keeping a roof over my head, these are things that I kind of need to have, right? Hence why it's called the must-haves category. So I spent just over $1,000 on groceries over 3 months, which is not terrible. I think before using YNAB, this was probably closer to like $1,500 or $1,600 because I wasn't really thinking about how much I was spending on groceries. Gas, about 215 bucks over the last 3 months. Again, not terrible. I don't drive a lot, but you know, I kind of fill up once a month, sometimes a little bit more than once a month, just depending. January, for example, I was driving more, so I had to fill up a couple times. Yeah, and then other things, auto insurance doesn't change, and neither does life insurance. I think the reason this happened twice in March is because the February payment didn't actually go through till March. I had the money set aside already. And then unexpected junk drawer is the big one, where I've been trying to cut down on using that category. Somehow in February I did a really good job, but in January it was above. I have a $300 target set for this account, or sorry, this category. So in January I overspent it. In March I underspent it, which is great, but I'm really trying to, yeah, just cut that down. I'm still going to keep this on my budget because I'd rather have the money there than worry about moving things around between categories, or, you know, not using my current month's paychecks for next month. So I'm going to keep it there until I can figure out how to truly move those like unexpected things into other line items. All right, so living my rich life, this is all the fun stuff. Adventures out there, I put 450 bucks a month towards saving for any kind of travel. Sometimes I spend it within the month, sometimes I don't. So in January I had to cover some tickets that I got to like a event that I'm going to in a couple months with some friends. And then last month I got an upgrade on a flight and I needed to cover that. So the money was already there, but that's kind of the spending that was happening. Treat yourself is basically things like haircuts, nails, whatever I need to do to make myself feel like a human. And yeah, kind of the average is about 151, just depends on what's happening that month. Nom noms is eating out. So I'm actually surprised that these categories are not as high as I expected them to be. April will be very different, but I have set aside more money this month because I know that I will be going out more this month. So yeah, I'm actually pleasantly surprised that this is not crazy and over budget. I don't think I set aside, I think I set aside like, target is 150 a month. So this is pretty good. Slot time, I think my target is 100, so not bad there. Probably could lower it a bit. If my average is about 63, maybe I can put this at 65 and put that money somewhere else. It's something for me to think about. Espresso Martini Tower is basically if I go out for like drinks or, you know, a music concert, something like that, and drinks usually happen at the time. I used to also be part of a wine club, which I've canceled, but I do also like treat people if we go out sometimes. I think January was like somebody's birthday, so I treated them to like a brewery, etc. So that always falls into Espresso Martini Tower. It happens. This is not a usual month for me. I know you probably hear that in many videos, but I think the typical would be like under $100, which is what my target is. Bebopping. I don't have a target for this category, and I don't actually put any money towards this category on a monthly basis. Maybe I should start putting, just having some in that account, but I kind of think about, you know, what is coming up in a month, and then I decide accordingly if I'm going to fund this category. So this is basically things like Ubers, Lyfts, etc. Technically, I guess I could put this in my adventures out there category, because usually if I'm taking an Uber or a Lyft, it's because I'm traveling. But this category exists, so I'm just going to keep it. And then culture and doohickeys, things like books or going to dance classes with friends, going to a pottery class, anything like that falls into this category. February, I don't remember what I did, but I clearly did a lot of things, so I categorized it as such. And then shopping, it's just a refill up to category. Money sits in there in case I need to buy something that's not, you know, groceries or restocking. Comes out of this. Overall, I spent $2,500 on, I guess, what you would traditionally call like wants, which is not terrible. Oh, I guess plus the like $1,000 on subscription. So like $3,500 over 3 months, which is, you know, around $1,000 a month. Okay, and then generosity. This is a big one for me. I donate a minimum of $125 a month, and some months is more because I have more donations that I like to give. January, for example, was the LA fires. I didn't have the random acts of kindness category at that point, so that's why it's not categorized as such. But random acts of kindness, I don't put any money towards this on a monthly basis, like as a assigned, but I usually have, you know, money in, say, my unexpected category. So if there's something that I want to donate to that I didn't plan for, I will put it in this category and then cover that spending. Wealth building. So these don't come out of my budget, and actually my investment savings is not actually on here because it's not technically spending, because it's just sitting in a category and in a savings account right now. So this only shows the $250 that I put towards my brokerage every month. It does not also show the $250 I'm saving towards my Roth IRA every month. So this should actually be double. So it's like $1,500. And then expect the unexpected. Basically things that I have spent on. Again, this doesn't cover anything that I am just putting into savings. There's a lot more that happens with that money, you know, from the income. But it's most of it just gets saved actually. So wheels and deals, I had to get some tires. And I think I had to also get some work done on my car. So that's what that was. And then health down payment. I pay for my high deductible health plan. I maxed out, I guess, what I needed to pay in February. So before the insurance will start covering things. So that's good and bad, right? Get it done early in the year, which means I have the rest of the year to save up towards next year. I wish I didn't have to do this, but it's the only way that I can use an HSA. So that is what I'm doing. And then reimbursements, again, is just really just buckets where money comes in and out. It's not particularly important in terms of my own tracking, right? So this says like negative $1,000. I'm just waiting on getting that back from somebody, and then that will go to zero because it'll just cancel out. So that's just what these categories are. So these numbers actually down here, which is the net, right? So this is income versus expenses. These are slightly off. March is definitely off because it's taking into account that reimbursement negative. So once that goes away, this will be back to normal. But yeah, the net income, February is much higher because that was when I got my tax refunds. So I'm curious to see what this will look like in upcoming months when I don't have, you know, larger kind of income streams coming in. Actually, yeah, because I got my state tax return in February, so that's why this number is higher. But yeah, I did spend less in February than I did in January. There's fewer days, so that's to be expected. And that's about it in terms of my income versus my expenses. Everyone likes to look at these donut charts, so I'm just gonna do a quick, brief walkthrough of them. It's the spending breakdown, so this is just things that are categorized as spending. It does not, again, take into account my savings. I need to figure out how to do that. I think maybe net worth would show me. But yeah, basically my biggest, things that happen every month are my mortgage, and then my student loans are a big one. So totaled, if they were totaled together, right, they would probably be the next, after everything else, would be the next largest category. So I think if we just do category groups, there we go. You can see like my student loans make up, 15 plus another 9, so 24% after mortgage of this amount. Okay, cool. And then February, similarly, the total spending was less, and then March, the total spending was more. This is not actually what I spent. Yeah, I spent less than that. I don't know. Oh, property tax. Again, it's not like money that I needed to pay for my income that month. I already had the money set aside, so I just covered that spending. So I figured this was the best way to show kind of the savings categories, because that's not really included in the income versus expenses. It's still money that I set aside from my paychecks slash other kind of income that I get. So in January, if I just pull up a calculator, we shall see. I saved around $38,272, not around exactly that amount, which is basically just, I just totaled together kind of everything in the available category, because obviously there was some spending, but that's just the nature of it. What expect the unexpected was obviously extremely high, because I just started YNAB back in January, and so this was like all my savings money that I already had set aside that I just put into specific categories. And then going into February, right, so I think the number probably actually went down here because I had to spend money from my health savings in order to cover my deductible before the insurance would pay for things. So this was about $37,900. And then in March, we are at 43,487. So that's the total, right? That doesn't mean I saved $43,000 in 1 month, but overall, right, I've moved up about, let's see, what's the subtraction here? Do that minus my original amount. So over the last 3 months, I've saved an additional, right, $5,000. And most of that came from my tax refunds, but the other money was from money that I was setting aside from my paychecks that came in, plus interest earned on my high yield savings accounts. So that's not too shabby for 3 months. Thanks for joining me. Please hit that like button, subscribe, and get notified when I post more content. It really helps my channel grow. And as always, I'll see you on the next episode of Noodlenomics.